Let's start at the beginning of your dance in Portland and that being at PSU. What what got you into dance at Portland State?
Actually, it was just a fluke. Of course, I always wanted to take dance class, but I didn't know dance would be my career at all. I came to Portland State University with a scholarship in accounting degree. But then, of course, when I was in my high school, my art teacher kept saying, if you like to dance, because I always wanted to dance in high school, but of course, they don't have a program for boys to dance. And so she said, well, at that time was in the 80s, and they say, Portland State, they actually have a contemporary dance company, professional company in there. And so they probably have a very good teacher there. And so when you go there, you can sign up for dance classes. And that's exactly what I did. And so it's part of it is selective and elective classes for my business degree. But before I knew it, I just went right in. I still remember it was an 8 o'clock class, and it was a huge class, and I didn't even know what to wear, appropriate wear for a dance class. So, just like wearing t-shirts, it's like going to the gym, just a short, and back in the 80s, it's really short t-shirts and socks, and beautiful dance studio in Shattuck. Terry Mathern was my first teacher. So that's how I started to get my introduction of the Western dance forms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, because you had come in with quite a significant classical training.
But not in the Western dance form.
Not in Western dance, yeah.
I was trained as a Peking opera performer. So, yes, of course, it encompassed acrobats and singing, dancing, but really it's about musicalities and just to carry on as a performer on stage. But I really never had professionally on stage, of course. You train until when you turn 40 or so, until the first time you get to be on stage. So of course, I'm always just, my entire high school time, I just want to be in the limelight. And be it dancing or actors or whatever it is. And not knowing that dance would be the profession, a vocation for it. So
totally. I'm just going to move the camera a little bit closer because I want it to pick up the volume. There we go. Sorry. Thanks.
Yes.
Was taking the class with Terry at PSU, did it feel different in a way that was exciting to you, or did it feel different in a way that was disorienting?
It's both. I mean, first of all, it was intimidating because it seems like everybody, of course, they went into, this is the college level, so they have some sort of movement, familiarity with that, and here I walked in with no expectations, anything at all. In a sense, that was good because then it was a whole new world for me to explore. It's exciting, and people was very well, and it's a nurtured environment. It was much warmer than, say, in a business class, definitely. And I just naturally, just it seems like it happened naturally, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And actually, although it's 8 o'clock class, I was still taking bus to school, and of course, you can't be late for the dance class, so bust my butt to get there. And but it actually is a great start for the day, and I look forward to it. And I don't remember. I think it was like Monday, Wednesday, Fridays classes, and that was actually fond memories that I had at Portland State. Yeah.
And not too long after getting involved in dancing, you got a lot of support from faculty members to say that this is something that that you were encouraged to give a lot more of your attention to.
Well, I just didn't know. Honestly, it's just not like saying anything, but I didn't know that how well I adapted to that form so well. And before I knew it, like by middle of the term, the other faculty member was standing at the door watching me dancing. I didn't know they were watching me either. And so I just knew, it was like, why are all those faculty members just keep watching? And I'm just scared because I heard of, always much harder in advanced class or intermediate class. And here the chair of the dance department, that was Nancy Matchek then. That was Nancy Martino, was standing there. And I said, why is she standing there? And so by, I guess, like 2/3 way through the quarter, she'd say, well, have you ever thinking of taking ballets? And I was like, oh God, no, I'm way too late for that. No, I don't think so. And plus, I had to go to an accounting class right after this dance class. I said, well, why don't you just skip it and just try it for once? I said, no way, I'm on scholarship with this program. I can't just skip it. But somehow she literally, she had a meeting with my accounting advisor and say, I already got a clearance, so you free for one day, just come take the class. She literally just called me after my modern dance class and said, well, the next class, why don't you go? And just we had to walk across the park, South Park, to go to this PE building and taking the dance classes. And of course, it just, now talk about intimidating. It's just like all of a sudden, like everybody knew what to do, and it was an advanced course. So all the faculty member was taking ballet class. So Kala actually was in there as well. And so I always get, I'm always standing in the middle of the bar so that I know if somebody's other faculty know, so that they can take care of me.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have a ballet slipper. Just have socks and of course just short PE shorts. Fell across the floors and have no idea what any of these terms mean. Just keep following and just swim or die.
Right.
In a sense.
And did you go to New York before or after working with the company We Keep?
Actually, that was, it was a little blur. I don't remember.
That's okay. We can.
I think it was during it. So it was during the time.
Oh, wow.
I was, so by the time I was, I believe it's sophomore or junior, that Stephen Petronio was presented by the PhD Contemporary Dance Seasons back then. And he had a master workshops, and I fell in love with his class. And I said, if there's anything that I could do, I would love to spend my entire life studying his methodologies or choreographies and even dance for him. And the opportunity arose, and then so I get to go. And then, of course, Nancy was saying, you don't know how good you were until you have to leave town. And Portland, I mean, is my hometown. I mean, I'm just almost like saying, I owe it to Portland. I mean, as far as in dance, I'm a product of Portland from the get-go. So just for me, it's like, really, I have to leave? It's like, here we go again. And, I was still, my English was not that proficient either, and never left town anywhere at all. Wow. So she's like, wow. So Nancy actually arranged for me with Petronio Dance Company. So he has a master workshop, and so that's when, and she made an arrangement to go on sabbatical at school.
Wow.
And so.
So you got that.
And actually, I even get lots of friends and supporters give me money because there's no means for me just to leave town. Sure. And in such a short notice, and just like, you're going to have cash to go, of course, just to stay. And even Zani Bauer, who was also a choreographer in town, now that at that time that she moved to New York, and she happened to be out of town, so she said, well, you can just share with me in her place. And that was wonderful. It just, timing was just perfect for me to
nice.
Go. So.
Nice. And then when you came back to Portland, did you start dancing with the company We Keep or continue dancing with them?
I think it was at the end of the company We Keep,
okay.
when I came back. And it's also, it was Measure 5 that when, it's particularly that was property taxes that coming in that they have to cut someplace. And so I think it was a major reduction across the state. And it's, that's also marked the end of Portland State Dance Department as well. So the company we keep sort of has some personnel change, and I danced, and even that it was changes of the leadership and artistics as well. And so I danced for Judy Patton for a while, and at the same time, most of the company members jumped ship to Mary Osland Dance Company.
Oh, wow.
And so I was asked to join to dance with Mary's, and so that was when the shift is.
Okay, cool.
And that was actually even before I graduated.
Wow. Wow. Let's back up a little bit. For people that have never heard or seen the company we keep, what was that company?
The company we keep is a professional, that they would call it residency at Portland State Dance Department. And so the company made up of all of the dance faculty and few other outsider professional dance members in there. They produce 2 shows a year. One is in Lincoln Hall as part of the PSU Contemporary Dance Seasons, and one in the studio shows. The concert itself is made up of the collaboration of all the choreographers, and that was actually pretty much the bulk of the Portland State Dance faculty then. Judy Patton, Nancy Maschek, Kathy Elverson, Bonnie Merrill, Terry Mathern, Sue Brantley, Tammy Gray, then Sarah Padilla, and Bonnie Netro. So, and they actually got even NEA awards, and so I was actually the only student / employees there, and it was kind of sweet deal that get to take dance class with them in the morning, and then in the late afternoon you're actually working with them as a colleague.
Right.
So.
Wow, that's very cool. And then from there, you said you went on to dance with Judy Patton?
Yes. Then after the defunct of the company we keep, then Judy carried on to the company, and then it's still we're calling the company we keep, but it's under artistic directions of Judy Patton for a while. Okay. And at the same time, that was when I also danced with Mary Osland, because most of my colleagues from the company keepers already have moved on to dance for Mary. So.
And what are some works that you remember doing with Mary from that time?
The very first one was Entry. It was actually the diaries of Liv, that her first daughter. And so, because I still remember when I was taking ballet class at Portland State, Liv was still a little baby outside in the cart, sleeping. Even took us some time, Carla's even playing music for the class, and she just slept there, and here's all the jumping around, and Mary was taking ballet class with Nancy, and here Lee was just, and then, she grew up to be a beautiful young lady, and so I believe that Mary just wanted to dedicate that shows to her, and so it was all about just growing up and being adolescents, and I still remember the section of Unravel, that how she's spending her time with Liv. And so that was the first work that I worked with Mary's company.
Nice. And then what was kind of the next artistic milestone for you after, or the next artistic highlight for you? Did you continue working with Mary for a long time, or did you start working with other people too?
Well, because I was just hungry for dance techniques around town. If there's a dance class somewhere, I would take Josie Mosley was teaching at the time. Joe Morales was teaching it over at the dancers workshops. So I was taking over there. Amy Bennett even was there. I actually danced with Zonnie Bowers and Joan Gunnersburn at the same time. But I think the major artistic change was when after I worked with Petronio's, and he had a gig left to go to Europe, and he's taking his company with him. And I was not a U.S. citizen yet, so I can't really leave the country. So whether I'm going to start all over again in New York since or go back home and finish my business degree. So in a way, it's sort of like this is the next step that I have forced myself to do, and it's sort of meant to be, you know. So, and do I just want to be a dancer and just perform for other people, or now that I have enough sort of ammunition under my belt, in a sense, that should I go on and just start experiment with choreography? And so when I came back and I finished my degree, but also was my dance practicum for my dance certificate program at Portland State, that was sort of propel me to think, oh well, let's just take a first step at choreography.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the beginning of my career as a choreographer, in a sense.
And is one of the first pieces you choreographed then that got a lot of public recognition was the dance practicum?
It was a dance practicum. I mean,
tell me now, you talked to me a little bit about that, but tell me again for the camera, what was that piece and what was the public reception of that piece?
The dance practicum that I did, the piece called Moment. And that was just literally, I just came back from New York, you know, and so it just heavy inspired from Petronial methodologies of movement inventions and just, you know, breaking neck speed type. And people still talk about this diagonal shaft that, you know, there was an ensemble work, but there's a segments of trios and duets, and then I did a solo. And so that was the only solo, the first solo. And most of the Portland audience, they didn't even know who I was or anything. But there was a line around the block getting it. And it was a major publicity. It's even like, this is a student project. Why is like the Oregonians or weeks to start doing a preview on it? I was still only 20 years old then. And I think that solo sort of brought attention to everybody. I still remember the cameramen were trying to capture me, and they just forgot. I say, "Holy crap! Who the heck is that?" Because then they just stopped following. The camera lost me for a while because I just went out of frame. I just went too fast, and they're just like, "What is that thing?" It just went over there across the stage. So, so that was just people still remember that was the first impressions of that performance.
Wow. And then so you came back, you had your practicum, the company we keep was dissolving, you got involved with Oslin and Company, and then after that, I know you've worked with Terry and Josie, and what was kind of the coming out of Terry? Coming out of Mary's company, did you start the Mintron Dance Company right then, or was that a little bit later down the road?
Well, even when I was working with Mary's, I would still continue to do work. But most of my work, my concert is, I only do small piece. You know, there's a support for independent artists. That was back then was called Metropolitan Arts Commissions. It was a precursor to RAC now, you know. So I was just doing a short piece, and then I would I invite other choreographers to set piece on me, and then so to making a concert out of it. So there's always Mintron presenting something. Mm-hmm. So not knowing that was sort of already in the direction of doing my own company work in that sense. So that's how one of the work that I actually call Labor of Love, that Josie Mosley, I asked Josie Mosley to choreograph a work for me, and then Mary did a work for me, and then working with Terry, and then on top of that, then I did my own work in that as well. Wow. So I did that for a while. Mm-hmm. So there's almost like every year I would present something. Mm-hmm. That there's part of it will be part of my work. Otherwise, I have guest choreographers. So that's when I asked Greg, working with Greg, and all of my teachers who I took class with, mm-hmm. And I just hunt them down because at that point, Josie left town to go to the Bay Area, and so I literally just went down there and worked with her. Wow. For 2 weekends and came back, and that was one of the pieces that she did for it as well. And even when Terry left town to go to New York, she still come back and set her work, or I came over to New York to study, and we went back and forth. And so until I think I did a major work was in 1994 that I got a major grant from Metro Art Commission. That was my first year. I decided to go back to Vietnam with my dad, and then that was a major part. That when I came back, it took me 2 years to make the work, and it's called The Road Home. And literally, that was just written out from pages of biographies, and just my experience just to reclaim memories. And in a sense, that was sort of my therapies. Is to see how far along that in dance, but also in the creative process of help me as an immigrant in a place. It's sort of trying to find an explanation and an answer of why am I here, and why English is my second language. And all of that actually, I didn't really want to deal with it, really. My entire time until 1994 was just trying to be an American. And sort of not really looking back to identity, and didn't even want to care to say, well, why I look different than the rest, trying to be the same with the rest of people, but why I look different. So that's actually, it's forced me to face with that issue as an immigrant, in a sense. So The Road Home was sort of a rite of passage, in a sense, that for my dance career. And it took 2 years, and it was 2 hours in evening lane with all Asian cast in Portland. So.
Sweet. So what was it like finding an all-Asian company to work with in the city? Was that a challenge? Was it exciting? Did it feel, what did that process feel like to you?
That was both exciting and challenge to set for myself, because I knew that it deal with issues with identities and immigrations and the questions of why we're here and where home is. And so in the sense that I knew that I have to have some at least Asian cast, just so that we understand from the get-go that was the basic platforms that we're starting from. So that was, in Portland, that's challenging. I mean, just to find any Asian to begin with, let alone Asian dancers. But in a sense, it was exciting that actually when I start digging and looking, say, wait a minute, people who's around me dance around in my classes and in the community, there are dancers around. So I was just lucky that at the time that I kept in touch with one of my dance classmates from Portland State, Tina Wong, that she didn't want to do any more dancing, and I dragged her out of her dance career retirement to do that. Diana Hinatsu was still dancing. And then Diana Tachibana was actually doing more like jazz dancing, isn't it? And Brian Grannon, that he was actually dancing for the Oregon Ballet Theater. And so that was quite exciting. I didn't even know how exciting it was until now looking back. I mean, it also was a major departure. That was the first major work, that Evening Lane, that just all my choreography. It took really a long journey home, yes, to finally settle in like who I am and where's home is. And so rightfully so, that is always a special piece in my heart too. And it was a long run as well. I had 2 weekend runs as an independent choreographer at the Winning Stat Theater.
Wow.
So at the time, so that was a major effort to go into it.
As you continue your choreographic career in Portland, moving forward from The Road Home, what are some things that were through lines for you, and what are some things that shifted?
I think the true lines is definitely was most of my work then that I really interested in is biography, if it's not autobiography. So most of the work is for me. I'm seem to be really funny guys and lighthearted, But when it's come to producing the work itself, I tend to dig a little deeper. I say, what is it really me that I really want to share my story with it? So in a sense, that's the bottom line, that is the undertone of my work, that it hasn't changed much in then. But also, I see myself as a product of being trained by so many different disciplines and different people who I admire and inspire from my dance career, throughout my dance career. So in a way, it's constantly evolve and adapt to like, oh, who am I studying it from this year or this week? And just encompass their aesthetic in there as well. Right. So that's constantly revolving and changing in that sense. I never stop learning from it, and I never stop, just inspired from all of these people. Say, how do you think all of this, And so it's exciting and fun just to go and take classes and say, oh, because of course, all of these choreographers who I work with or taking dance classes with, right. They also evolving as well. And so just to see and observe them, to see their aesthetic is still there, but yet the vocabulary or their methodologies has changed throughout the years. And so that was fun part for me in that sense.
Yeah, and in your dance company, you got to work with some wonderful dancers that were choreographers in their own right. What are some of the connections that you fostered that then the people came into your company to dance that seemed an important part of your work?
I would say most of the people who I danced with actually, or invited me to work with my company, was already making work for themselves. Terry Mathen, Mike Barber, Coleman. And there's some aspiring dancers, otherwise, they already on their way or even thinking about being the choreographers. So I don't think was not a single dancer I work with that they're not a choreographer themselves.
Wow.
And so in a sense, I don't know, maybe I attracted to that sense of responsibility, but also that sense of maturity that I'm looking for. As far as say, well, is that because you don't want to be a mentor for these people? Not necessarily so, but I think I was more about sharing the ideas and knowing that they will take it very serious in their heart and just put their guts and souls out. Because actually, it was really from the road home taught me, it's like, if you have to drag your butt into rehearsal, then it's time to resign. There's no point to do it. And so unless your passion calls for it, then so that's why in a sense I'm not there in the rehearsal trying to convince people, say you are professional dancers and come on, we can get through it. I'm not interested in that. I'm more interested in is that here's this idea, and if you into it, then let's all work on it. So that was more of my way of working with the company itself. So in a way, yeah, we chit-chat outside, but then when the company is at rehearsal, then it's seriously just, I think they work much harder than actually I do, because I was more of experimenting. Sometimes I keep apologizing. It's just like, I'm not sure this is the direction, the idea we go, but let's just put our guts and souls in there, sweat, and then we work from there. And most of the work, because the subject matter was, in a sense, is autobiography, so there was a sense of respect that we're not going to go too far of an abstract in a way. But then also it was serious work. It's not like something funny and stuff. To date, I only made like say 2 funny pieces, but otherwise most of my work is pretty much deeper. Like it's not a funny matter in a sense.
What are some pieces that you choreographed looking back that seem like highlights in your career?
Well, of course, my first work moment, The Road Home, and then the major work was Nocturnal Path. That actually I didn't even expect it to get so much attention out of it. It was once again, that was my fascination with Buddhism. And it was really because I trying to get a little closer to my dad, because he wanted to become a monk. And so because of that, his journey said, well, let's go back to Vietnam together. But this trip that when we go back was, I think we went to every single temple that existed in Vietnam because he wanted to pay tribute to every single one of them. But that's the beginning the journeys of my curiosities about what's the philosophies of Buddhism and why is it that my dad now want to renounce of everything to devote his entire life at this late in his life. So the work with Nocturnal Path is sort of because most of the time of my sort of like unravel this journey to find out about this philosophy was in the night. It was like most of my discovery was in the middle of the night. Oh, I get an idea, but I can't share with anyone because I can't wake them up. So I can't wait to the next morning. So here I am, just laying there wide awake, but just getting all of this idea, trying to try out. Wow. But that was also the major work because then it got the NDP Awards, National Dance Projects, for it, and we toured with it. It's also a major work collaboration with Christine Boudet that I always wanted to work with her. So that was a major one. And then the life-changing experience was, for me, it's called Forgotten Memories. It was not designed for a conventional, the audience sitting on one side and we perform on one side, but it was more of an interactive. I'm forcing the audience to move around, and I forced to take the chairs away from the audience, and it wasn't in the ballroom. It was about the genocide of the Cambodian genocide. That I took a tour there in Cambodia of the killing fields, and I couldn't shake it off. First I thought, well, give it some 2 weeks or so, but I could not shake it off. And once again, I'm using dance as my therapy, just so to process it out and trying to iron things out in my head. And hence the result was Forgotten Memories of that part. So, and those experience, it just was because by then, the company, I tried to have sort of a feedback with the community. So I asked the genocide survivors from Cambodia to come. And that was really quite a major effort just to ask them to come because it was a memories that they want to be forgotten. And to ask them to face with it first. And the second half was sort of trying to pick it up and go on with it. And for me, though, I think if my works that affect just one person's out there, even though there was 1,000 people watching the work, if it changed at least one, so it moved just once, then it was, for me, that was certainly self-rewarding for that part.
Yeah. So like your process of kind of like dealing with and healing with this atrocity also influenced other people's ability to heal and deal with and to bring up these forgotten memories.
Yes, and that was it's a major rewarding for me because I was afraid because who am I to talk about the genocide survivors? I mean, yes, I escaped from the Vietnam War, but there's no way to the degree of what these people had to go through. So in a sense, it's quite a lot, it's gutsy just to tackle this kind of projects and then asking the survivors to come and just comment about that. And so we're still good friends with some of these survivors, and I still keep in touch with them. A few of them actually were so much inspired, and they start paint, or they start to write about their memories. So that was great, and even to today, I think that was well worth it for all of this, time that we're going through to make the work. So in a sense, because of that unless that the work has that major significance in my life, then I'm not interested in making it.
Yeah, that makes sense. In several of the major pieces, Road Home, Forgotten Memories, you've dealt with looking at Asian culture as an inspiration for the framework for those pieces. And later on in your work, like Forgotten Memories, you started to work in your first piece. You had an all-Asian cast, and then after that, you started to have a more Caucasian integrated mixed cast. How was that a challenge for you, or did it come up at all for any of the company members that it was hard to deal with the cultural focus outside of their own culture?
I think that was actually, in a way, it was exciting because I want to share it beyond, because right after the road home, that again, the issues of immigrations is actually larger than what I thought it was. It's just an Asian, but I say American is as the big melting pot in the sense that, well, perhaps that if they don't know, then maybe they dig a little deeper, and they say, well, actually, it's in the back of their history as well. So in a sense, that's why Forgotten Memory was, even Nocturnal Path, it was really about Asian culture, right? Because of Buddhism, but yet to bring all of these folks in, and I really wanted a multicultural in the sense that to say, well, what about from your side, as looking at from an outsider point of view, that actually I never looked at it in that sense. So then I could learn it from them as well. So the feedback was actually much better in that sense. I still remember, even like Terry, so Mike Barber, say, well, I'm seeing it from this side of the coin. And for me, it's like, oh, I never thought of that side. And so then the work itself then evolved and then it's changed and shifted in that direction as well, that encompassed from their philosophies or their thought or their aesthetic in a sense. So with that. And so that was exciting in a way. And to be able, to in Portland, let alone that to have an idea of encompass just more than just one race in point of view in that is rare enough. So I sort of welcomed and encompass that in the sense that that's actually a great opportunity for me to learn as well.
Yeah. I think that people that are like smart and curious and intelligent, like the people you've got to work with, are oftentimes curious and want to embody other cultures, but themselves may not feel like they have the permission to do that without the invitation or without the framework to be able to do that.
Right. But also I think they care about it too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like there's a question I remember, part of the work of the road home that we toured was The War Within. And that part was about me, at the point where I was still young, didn't know what it meant to ask to leave countries in the middle of the night. And so the soundtrack itself has a lot of guns, sounds, and and the images was like dying body floating across the stage and things. But then we tour, and of course, those are educational places that we perform in assembly time for like high school kids. And I still remember Mike Barber was just questioning, say, you think it's actually appropriate or not? But it was great that he actually asked me that question, because most of the people, they just like, wow, but no one actually asked me such questions until I had to pause for a moment and say, wait a minute, is it appropriate or not? But at least, whether or not that it's appropriate or not, but at least I visited those kind of issues that from the company member asking me those points. That was a great moment for me to sort of to pause and just to ponder about the idea of, well, the appropriateness of just, old age is to view my work in a sense. Wow. And, good or bad, or the consequences that I actually introduce them to such subject matter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In your talking about your own choreography, Mike is a person that's come up a couple of times from dancing with you. Mm-hmm. And this makes me think about 10 Tiny Dances and your work with 10 Tiny Dances. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about some of the pieces that you've done in that format?
Actually, I was honored to, when Mike is asked, so would you want to do it? Because most of the time, being me and people know like my aesthetic is like, I try to move a lot and I'll move fast, but yet, okay, on 4x4. He asked me a couple of times, and I said, well, let me think about it. And then I think even I remember for twice, I keep saying, well, give me some more time. Like, how about just wait for the next series? And he said, okay, just take your time whenever you want. And so finally, when I was ready to do it, I think it was the beginning of Forgotten Memory. I just came back from Cambodia and I couldn't shake it off. And of course, everything was just so claustrophobic in a sense for me when I was at the museum itself. And so I said, oh, well, so here's is my chance to do it in a constrained place. Um, and in a sense, that's sort of beginning of my process to make Forgotten Memory was let's make everything really constrained. It was because of 4x4, the Ten Tiny Dances invitation, the beginning of Forgotten Memories in a sense. Because it was actually, we performed at Blue Hour, and I was thinking of these sections of, doing it in the, something romantic, but yet it's horrifying for me. But from an outsider, it was so romantic, like, oh, with this mosquito nets, and they're just sitting in this bed and just beautiful lit, but yet inside a person, which is completely just grotesque in a sense. But that's how it came out that way. It was the beginning of Forgotten Memories.
Wow. Let's look kind of shift from choreographic focus and performing to a little bit of the spaces in Portland that have helped foster your process. And earlier on, you briefly mentioned Dancers Workshop. What was Dancers Workshop for people who don't know, and how did you interact with it?
Dancer Workshop's actually just another, it would be like a conduit of today. So that was sort of a community dance places for professionals, the people who have nowhere else to go other than an institution, at Portland State University at the time. So that were comprised of all the independent choreographers, Joe Morales, Josie Mosley, Joan Gunnersburn, Amy Bennett. And that was in the weekends or at night that I can actually do it away from Portland State. And then also they were also offering classes in the summer as well. And so that's the mean for everybody I want to keep in shapes. And so it was I think it was on Northwest 14. Is upstairs, that's all I remember. It was a big, beautiful dance wood floors. And so that's how I met all of those choreographers outside of Portland State, faculty members. And so in the sense that was the one space that available back then, on top of the Shattuck Dance Studio. Otherwise, I think even when I remember Dance with Mary Austin, that we did a place that's on top, outside of, it's right on Burnsides and 9th, I believe.
On the west
10th.
side?
Yes, it's actually it's on the north side of Burnside, and just right on Burnside as well. I think it's part of the what is that called? I think it's sort of Pacific Northwest. It was sort of PNCA's, part of PNCA's as well. Yeah, wow. It was there where we did a concert in there even. So it was actually very scarce as well. I did take classes with, what is that company? Canal Artistic, let's see, on 37th and Hawthorne as well. Dance movement.
7th and Hawthorne. Do Jump?
Do Jump, yeah. Yes, of course.
That's okay.
Yes, and so I also take classes there as well.
Right.
Yeah. Those are the only few places that was available then. So making work for me, I was lucky enough that being supported by Portland State, so I was with Shattuck Halls, and then when it was outside of there, and then that's how I would get introduced to Reed as well, because Pat Wong was invite me as a guest teacher, and also say, well, you could have your dance company here, and as long as you can just have your rehearsals open to students to watch. And I still remember with a little dance studio, I couldn't even get to use the big gym, sport gyms. And so, then so with the whole company, they was making the road homes back then. And that I was able to use some of this sometimes in that space at Reed as well. So.
Wow. Between when the Dancers Workshop closed and Conduit opened, how much of a gap was there in there?
It was a long gap, really, because when I believe dancer workshop was still going on when the Portland State dance department was closed, and it was a devastating news for the entire dance community, because then there was not just we lost the dance studio, but we also lost the contemporary dance seasons. So in a way, Portland, as far as in the dance scenes, was in the dark for a while, until Whitebird coming into place. And that's not until 1996 or 97 when they came in. So in a sense, all of a sudden now that we don't get to know what's going on out there in the contemporary dance field. I mean, I just remember because they were presenting Senkajukus, McGee Marine. Mark Morris was still, nobody know who Mark Morris was, and still dancing in the studio back then. And then when we presented him at Portland State. Wow. And Petrona that was his inauguration of his company work, otherwise. So, and then we didn't know what's going on out there, what happened with Paul Taylor's, any new work was going on. So in a sense, it was in the dark for a while. So dancer workshop was sort of, in a way, was like conduit. So everybody just gravitated there to take classes and stuff. And that's how actually I got introduced to great Bill Myers as well, because he also just came back as well to Portland.
Wow. Was there a time when Dancers Workshop had shut down and Conduit had not opened yet?
I think yes, that's happened as well. That I think Dancer Workshop was already done, and Conduit was not happened yet. Okay. Wow. So
kind of a gap.
Yeah, it was a little gap there that nobody had any place to go other than just okay, there's Oregon Ballet Theater. That was still over at the Portland State the Portland Art Museum then as well. So, but there was just a ballet class. So, there was no a contemporary dance class was there then even.
Did people struggle to find rehearsal space and classes to take then? Or did it feel like just kind of there was a natural flow and people figured out how to make
people
things
actually
happen?
still figured out places to perform or take classes and things too. I remember even I danced for Wendy Hambridge even, and we just found some places as a ballroom dance studio we go to out in deep Southeast. And we went to Metro Arts even back then, that they have some late night open slot that we could do. Wow. So, I mean, in a sense, we will find any corners around town to do it. It may not be within Portland. I mean, sometimes we drove the way out. So I say, where are we going? And just rehearse these places and things, I mean, but then I remember the times there were there was a lot of site-specific pieces happen too. Linda K. Johnson's doing pieces out there, and Bonnie Merrill was decided to bring her work outside, and so in between the alley between the Schnitzers and the Performing Arts Center, in that alley that she brought the entire dance community together. Wow. And we use. Back then, actually, even when the dance program closed, the Shattuck Hall was still not being covered by the carpet yet. And so we was able to use it at times. And of course, the dance studio, the little dance studio in the PE building at Portland State was never covered. And so it's small, but at least there's a space for people to rehearse and make work.
So it sounded like the spaces that were available at the academic colleges and universities around town, people figured out how to get into those spaces and use them either through connections directly to that university or being able to ask for permission.
Right, yes. Yeah. And, even then, everyone knows everybody, it's just a small dance communities, and they know that there's a scarce in space. So even I think at Reed, they was doing, back then, they still have a summer dance intensive that most of dancers taking classes here as well. So we were able to use even a small dance studio if we can just trade some deal with the universities. But otherwise, yeah, they will find a way.
Yeah. And you mentioned about Bonnie Merrill's performance in between the Schnitz and the Newmark. Were you a part of that?
Yes, I mean that actually was a memorable piece as a performer's experience. It's almost like a big party. I look forward to it. So it's like a reunion with everybody's in it. First, it was Gather first. She got inspired from her trip in China, and so she decided to do. Well, it will be a challenge to ask for 10 men in Portland to do it, and then bring only one woman in the corps to do that. And so that took her a long time to produce that work. And it's great because then, wow, I mean, I take classes with these people, we come and go, but we don't really actually have a socializing. So there's a big brunch party before rehearsal. And Bonnie was so nice. She brought snacks for us all the time. And so it seemed like a big party before we actually work in there. And then I think the second half of the year, she decided to do scatter, which means the reverse part is to have 10 women, only one man. Wow. But even back then, to find 10 men, professional male dancers, was like, wow, how did you find them? Yeah. So even with Jerry Murat from Imago, that was in there as well, and Greg Bill Myers, and everybody was in it. It was great. Joe Morales was in it as well, and so that was a great experience. And then she combined the two sections together. So then now that you have a cast of 22 men and women, and then it come to the point where then it encompassed then that she decided to just sort of like a community place, and so she brought it out into the street, and that became, it's more like she brought in even more dancers then too. So it was almost like a big dance community piece.
Cool. And was this the piece with big tumbleweeds that were part of Artquake, or is this a different?
It was.
This is
yes,
the same
that
piece.
was the same
All right.
piece. Yes.
And that piece then, the Artquake piece, had the 20 people and the 10 male, 10 female.
Yes, was part of that too. Yes.
Wow.
And
wow,
so
wow.
it's almost like a long journey to get there.
Yeah.
But she really wanted to do that, So
at this time, was the contemporary dance season at Portland State still happening, or had that ended by the time that the Artquake performance was?
Artquake was actually already going on, because I remember my first gig as I completely was doing the Peking opera piece in it with the dance technique only. And so, in a sense, it's sort of like if my master would see that, he probably would fire me. But I use all of this basic essential of what it takes to be a Peking opera performer in dance components. Mm-hmm. And I put them all into the dance piece for it. And that was my first Artquake gig as well. And to share with the program with Sahomi Tachibana, this is a legendary Japanese dancer. And so that was great. The first half was her, and the second half was mine. But I remember Artquake was going on already before the closure of the dance program.
Okay, wow. And I remember there was some memorable show at the end of the PSU dance program. Were you a part of that, or was that somebody else? Actually,
that was great that,
that was
they knew that was the end of the PSU contemporary dance season. So that was Judy then was still curating for that contemporary dance season. And she decided to say, well, let's just face it, just presenting us a challenge. So she asked for 3 male choreographers. That was Keith Goodman, Greg Billmeyer, and myself to do. But the only thing is we have to work with the choral cross-tie group. So you can do anything, but you have to work with them. So I think choral cross-tie was also in residencies at Portland State University in the music department as well. Bruce was the artistic director of it, and so we just all accept the challenge and work on it, and that was the show. Wow. So,
Did that come out as 3 different pieces?
Yes, it was completely 2 different pieces, and even different casts of the singer as well, because I believe Keith was only used, I think it's only like 7 or 8 of them. Greg used not all of them, and they all move around. He asked them to move around with him, and I used the entire cast of him for it, and that was a work descending, and I decided to use all the music of the South American composer music. Like, it was fun. That was actually also my first challenging work. That was music, with choral musics and. I have fun with it. Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Let me look at my notes really quick to see what
Sure.
what we're leaving out.
I think we left out the Oregon Ballet Theater thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. You choreographed it.
Oh my God! I hate to say that. Okay. Well, we always have to have up and down in our lives, right?
Yeah.
But it was the most. It forced myself to actually recognize myself. Of course, I already make work for my. Not really. I didn't have a formal company then, but I've been producing works and stuff. And apparently back then, that was James Canfield, was artistic director of the Oregon Ballet Theater. This is right at the beginning of the joining of the Ballet Oregon and Pacific.
Ballet theater.
Ballet theater, yes.
Yeah.
And so and he hosts the series called American Choreographer Showcase. Mm-hmm. So he'd been brought in B.B. Mueller, Donald Byrd, Paul Taylor's works, and he hasn't presented any or even worked with any local choreographer. And then here I received a phone call from him. I was like, would you be interested to work with the company? It's like, oh wow, I was 21 years old to ask to work with a professional ballet company. And knowing that the program was with Paul Taylor, Cloven Kingdom, and Donna Bird's brand new work. And Dennis Spade was doing his last work on his dying bed even, and then myself. So of course, I think it was a great experience, but also it's sort of like a special junction in my dance career, in a sense that, so I'm being recognized as a choreographer, in a sense, that James respected me and actually was gracious enough to present this challenge to me to work with, a major ballet company. And I think that was also my first professional commissioning work as well in my dance career.
Yeah. Though it sounds like a real challenge, because you were so much younger than so many other people that had a very established career at that time.
Yes, I mean the work. That's why it's appropriately so that I titled Uncharted Territories. And I just don't know how to say no to, because I just feel it's so great to be able to work with all these wonderful dancers, and so rather than just, you don't know what you're working on, maybe you just start small. No, I took the entire company. and just to come in, and of course, because all of my training was contemporary dance, so I said, what, slipper? No, I don't want you all to wear even a ballet slipper. And I still remember dancers, so we start having blister because it's bare feet. I say, well, let's get used to it, because I've always been dancing in bare feet. So the piece was actually performed in bare feet, and I think that was it was challenging for the dancer. But little as I know, I was like, duh. I mean, I walked in, I don't know, I walked right into a trap.
Yeah.
It was a great experience for
Totally.
me. It was sort of like, there's an institution, and here I've been working my entire life up until then with just an independent choreographer. And so to walk into this sort of institution that, there's a 15-minute break every 2 hours or 3 hours, and there's always staff surrounding me to help me. Like there's a ballet master taking notes for me, and there's a costume designers always just following your work. Have you think about ideas? And so it's just so structured in a sense of, that's not how independent choreographer works. But then it's all come at me in full force, and I had no preparation for it at all. So.
Now, after this commission, you were commissioned to do more work by other people, Whitebird being one of them.
Yes.
What was that experience like, being commissioned by Whitebird to make work?
Interestingly, when I first met Whitebird, Paul and Wally was not in Portland, but was in Seattle. Because back then, I was actually working my graduate work at University of Washington, but still continued doing my own work. And so my work was being presented by on the boards. And of course, knowing Paul and Walter, they travel everywhere to look at all the work. And so my name was on the radars, and so they came afterward just to talk with me. And I say, oh, so you're from Portland. Actually, and then I'm telling them that I actually was from Portland. Actually, I'm just here as a transfer, just to work on my graduate degree. So they beginning to follow me. And I think I was still doing some smaller work for a while, until then they finally find the right moment to commission the work. And just happened to be that's when they asked me when they saw me to do this duet with Terry. First, that was part of the, we call Art Explosion, was working with the Portland Taiko, presenting it with all the Asian artists from music, theaters, and dance, presenting it. And so I did a duet with Terry first. And that was the beginning of Nocturnal Path, that Whitebird, they saw that little duet, 10 minutes, and they say, wow, I love that work. Could you actually just use that as a springboard and to make an evening length of that work? And with their guidance and support as well, and as I got a National Dance Project award for that one.
Wow.
And that was from Whitebird, first commission.
And what are there other, Portland is a town that doesn't have a lot of presenters in it, but I mean, are there other people that have commissioned?
Yes,
you?
and of course, Body Vox came in. They did have a series of, now I don't remember what the series is called. It was just for studio shows, for sort of like an experimenting and laboratory for choreographer to work with the company. So I was asked to make the work for Body Vox as well. So that was fun to work with them and to get to know, because I knew Jamie's and Ashley, but wasn't never really professionally knowing them that close, and just now finally get the commission with them. And then after that, before that actually, even before Whitebird, there's a program called the Portland International Performance Program that was an offspring out of Portland Contemporary Dance season, Portland State Contemporary Dance season. Michael Greek was curating it, and he was the one who commissioned the Road Home work for it. And then after that, and then of course now lately, Sarah Sleeper asked me to commission work for the Northwest Dance Project, in a sense.
Nice. Was Portland looking, kind of shifting tracks now from choreography and presenting? Was Portland Dance Theater around when you started at PSU, or was the timing there different?
It was actually, I think it's different because I heard about it, but I never seen any activities going on by then. So I think by that time, most folks has already moved on, because I think Judy and Kathy and Pat Wong has already moved on with their own. Like Pat has was a faculty member at Reed College, and Judy and Kathy was a faculty member at Portland State Universities when they have a dance program. And Jane Ryer was actually still only the remaining independent choreographer there. Bonnie Mera was still guest choreographer with even the Oregon Ballet Theater, but she's more like the only independent choreographer that I know of. But most of the folks has already part ways.
Right.
So
it kind of wrapped up a little bit. The sun just came out, so I'm going to kind of turn up the light
even
here.
more.
On the side, maybe turn it down a little bit on that side. There we go. Nice, nice. So and I realized we haven't talked about Conduit yet. As what was that space? How did that space help support you? How did you interact with Conduit?
I was actually taking class at Conduit with Terry and Mary, of course, and Greg. And of course, Conduit at that time was their home to do their own work. So of course, I already rehearsed there. You know, most of the time, my evening lifetime was really Conduit in a sense, whether it was for Terry's or for Greg or it was for Mary. So I was already there. So naturally, when so I rented rehearsal time when it's open to do my own work. And so it's happened that way. So of course, taking class with him, and then of course rehearsing with her company. And so in a sense, I was their regular renters for a long time. Matter of fact, most of my major work, Nocturnal Path and Forgotten Memories, was born from there. So,
wow. I think that we're kind of at this big shift for contemporary dance in Portland with Conduit losing their space. It feels like there's a generational shift that's about to happen. Companies that have had long-standing repertories are stopping to do that repertory, and there's a lot of new energy coming in. So it feels like something like there's room. It's unclear what the path is going to be in the future. Perhaps at this moment more so than at other moments.
Yes, I think this is now the beginning of the end of what it was in the 80s and the beginning of the millennium of these young choreographers. And even though there was a lot of actually, when I just taking classes at Terry, just the last day at Conduit, taking class there, and just to see all of these young faces that I haven't seen them before.
Yeah.
And and with the series Dance Plus that I've been watching Conduit presenting, there's all of these great choreographers that come out. So I think it is the beginning of that millenniums movement, in a sense that people will find a place. And it's not like before that there's only Conduit. Now that, of course, Reed had this beautiful new performance space, and Body Rock has now established their own place. Northwest Dance Project just did. And so in a sense, it's different climate altogether now. That it is unknown in a sense that, all of these young choreographers that come out and the independent choreographer who was back then, who continues to do the work now, has stopped, So in a sense, it really is marking the beginning of this new journeys that I don't know where it's going.
Do you have a sense? I'm asking a lot of people this about what resources at this moment in time does the Portland dance community need to make the best dance possible and to continue to grow in the best way?
I think what Conduit been presenting of Dance Plus, all over the community, and even with RAC, continue to support independent choreographers, and that's just a vital part, that to keep it going, in a sense. Because I remember when I first started out, that was called before that, of course, MAC, Metropolitan Art Commission, and now it's RAC. Without that kind of support, and without the space, whoever wanted presenting us, then there's nowhere, even if we want to make the work, there's nowhere to perform. And, and there's no funding. If there's no funding, then you can't really do it, even as a solo work or just a small work. So in a sense, without those kind of foundations is there, I would then worry if it's not going to happen or not. Because the space is like in an institution of universities, of course, that they would have to stay within the academic curriculum program. So support for independent choreographer has to be out in the community, in a sense. So without Conduit and without a RAC, artists will probably go away, in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's got to have some sort of not a formal presenter. I know Whiteboard is actually presenting such a successful track of choreographers, but for an experimenting work, and just for a fertile ground in a sense for these folks to experiment their work and to grow into it. They've got to have opportunity to do that. If not, then they don't even have a sense of validations in a way. It's like, okay, maybe it's a fair work, but at least I learned from it.
Right.
It's got to have a room for that.
Yeah. So there's just the simple necessity of like artists need space to make work, and your experience of presenting yourself versus being presented. What was the differences in that for you? What did being presented allow you to do that you couldn't do?
I would say the major part is the money. It's really so, because more than even the more that I have my company and taking care of my company, then I would say 60% of it is just trying to find the money to pay for everything. I mean, every single move that I made cost money. And so without that kind of support, then I have to go raise it. And then for me to raise it, then there goes my studio time. So in a sense, so when you're getting presented, 60% of it you actually gain back and just put it back into this rehearsal time with the dancers. But otherwise, every single minute or move that you make, it costs. The idea, I wonder if I could do this. Well, if you want to have costume, that's money. If you have media work with multi-dimensional things, well, okay, you need a space, you need the means to do that. And so with every move that you make, that it requires funding in a sense. So that's a major difference. And then of course marketing. By the time that you finish your work, it's already too late to do marketing. So in a way, if you get it presented, then all of that marketing has been done. Otherwise, the independent choreographers, again, is taking your time away from the dance studio to do all of that work. Because all of those work takes relationships. Even with asking for funding, you can't just say, oh, I just writing a grant and I'm going to get it. No, I mean, there's a track record and there's a relationship with all of the folks around, and same thing with marketing as well. I mean, if the press never heard of you, then it doesn't matter how many press releases you send out. It's just not going to end up in anywhere at all. So it's just a dead-end street. So there's always a relationship, and so it's just almost like another baby that you have to take care of, on top of making the work.
Right. And the presenter then is your babysitter.
Yes, in a sense. I mean, they took care of literally 60 or 70% of it, really, of the work that to being in a company itself. And and then I just saying, it's hard that the successful of the company then touring, okay, because when you're making the work, that's your investment. And so until when you tour, then you get your return. Well, unfortunately, when now that I have gone to that route, then I say, okay, touring is another animal as well. It's like you have to really continue to have that work survive. Dance is an ephemeral form.
Sure.
You can't just pull it out of your pocket and just say, okay, oh, you want this piece? I will perform for you that piece. So in a sense, artistic growth, there's a question about it too, of whether I want to go back to do that work just so I can make money, or do I just spend more time to create a new work? Yeah. So again, that's just like a constant war. That's a tug of war, in a sense. Like you have to keep both directions going at once. And as an independent choreographer, that's a lot to ask. Yeah, it's quite challenging, And so I've been there on both sides. So I'm still struggling with it as, taking care of the company in that sense. And that's probably why I have to slow down someplace. Sure. Something's got to go.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. We've covered a lot of ground from PSU to the present day. Am I leaving out anything? Is there anything that is coming to mind that seems important to you about Portland dance, your involvement in Portland dance? This is kind of my catch-all.
Well, I would say Reed is actually being part of it too, that not knowing, that to become such a major part of my life now. Mm-hmm. That, coming here, I remember coming in for Benny Bell, doing this summer intensive here, and then get to, Pat Wong throughout my youth time, and not knowing that we would be my future's place, was to go home, and then get to come back and get. Actually, it was even my first professional experience with Reed College was RAW, Reed Art Week. That when students invited me to perform, actually in the Common of all places, not even in a space, anything like that, and then keep coming back for other formal ones after and subsequently. But even that, and then beginning to just, then since I came back from University of Washington, then being a guest teaching, for a while, and then before I knew it, the job just came up, and then when I just came, then it just happened to be the college actually give a special recognitions of dance for so long. I mean, of course, dance has been here before I was even here, but yet to get this such a special recognition that when I arrive at Reed as a faculty member, it's just a special time
Nice.
that to be in.
Fantastic.